History is filled with names that still make the world tremble. But at the very top of that list stands one man, Adolf Hitler. How did an obscure, failed artist from Austria, a man who once lived in homeless shelters, rise to become the absolute Führer of a global superpower? How did Germany, a nation of philosophers, scientists, and musicians, willingly trade its hard-won freedom for the chains of a brutal dictator? Today on Preo Tidings, we are peeling back the layers of history. We aren't just looking at dates, we are uncovering the chilling psychological and political machinery that allowed the Nazi Party to hijack a civilization. This is not just a story of the past, it is a dark, necessary warning for the future. To understand Hitler's rise, we must first understand the absolute desperation of post-war Germany. In 1918, the German Empire collapsed. The Treaty of Versailles that followed didn't just end the war, it humiliated a nation. Germany was forced to accept total war guilt, lost 13% of its European territory, and was burdened with a staggering debt of 132 billion gold marks in reparations. By 1923, hyperinflation had turned the German mark into worthless scrap paper. At its peak, a loaf of bread cost over 200 billion marks. People were seen carrying wheelbarrows full of cash just to buy a single egg. This economic annihilation created a vacuum of despair. In this darkness, the German people weren't looking for a typical politician, they were looking for a messiah. And Adolf Hitler was waiting in the shadows, feeding on their anger. Hitler's greatest weapon wasn't a gun, it was his voice. He discovered a terrifying talent for public speaking in the beer halls of Munich. He didn't just give political speeches, he performed carefully choreographed rituals. He would start low and quiet, building tension until he was screaming with a hypnotic, raw fury. He used simple, repetitive slogans. He practiced his gestures in front of mirrors. He identified enemies, the Jews, the communists, and the November criminals who signed the peace treaty, to blame for every single German problem. Under his Nazi party, the NSDAP, he built a propaganda machine led by the master of manipulation, Joseph Goebbels. They told the people they were the Aryan master race, the Herrenvolk, genetically superior to all others. They turned legitimate fear into irrational hatred, and that hatred into blind loyalty. By 1932, the Nazi Party was the largest in the Reichstag, but Hitler didn't have total power yet. In January 1933, he was legally appointed chancellor as part of a political compromise. The elites thought they could tame him. They were wrong. A month later, the Reichstag fire, the burning of the German parliament building, provided the perfect excuse. Hitler declared a state of emergency and suspended all civil liberties. Then he pushed through the Enabling Act of 1933, which gave him the power to pass laws without the consent of Parliament. In one stroke, democracy was dead. He banned all opposition parties, crushed labor unions, and established the Gestapo, the secret police. A climate of fear settled over Germany. Neighbors began spying on neighbors, and any voice of dissent was silenced in the newly opened concentration camps like Dachau. Absolute power requires an absolute enemy. Hitler's ideology was built on the systematic demonization of the Jewish population. He stripped them of citizenship, then their property, and eventually their lives. This was the beginning of the Holocaust, a state-sponsored genocide that would eventually claim 6 million Jewish lives and millions of others, including Romani people, the disabled, and political dissidents. But Hitler's hunger wasn't just internal. He preached the concept of Lebensraum, or living space. He believed Germany needed to expand its borders to the east to survive. To ensure no one inside his circle would challenge him, he executed his own allies during the Night of the Long Knives. With his internal house cleaned, he turned his eyes toward Europe. In 1939, his invasion of Poland dragged the world into the bloodiest conflict in human history, forcing Germany into a war against the Allied powers, Britain, the Soviet Union, and the United States. We must ask the uncomfortable question, why did millions continue to follow him even as the shadows of war grew? For a few years, Hitler seemed to deliver on his promises. He built the world-famous Autobahn, revitalized the German military, and practically erased unemployment, which had stood at 6 million people when he took office. To the average German, the country felt strong and respected again. But this economic miracle was a hollow illusion. It was built on massive debt, the theft of Jewish assets, and the forced labor of those deemed inferior. The German people had traded their moral souls for a false sense of security. By the time the bombs started falling on Berlin, they realized the true cost of their bargain. But by then, it was far too late to turn back. Adolf Hitler's rise to power is a permanent scar on the face of humanity. It proves that when a society is blinded by economic pain and nationalistic anger, it becomes vulnerable to the most dangerous charismatic ideologies. It reminds us that dictators are often not seized by force, but are given power by the people in exchange for easy answers. Freedom is not a permanent state. It is fragile, and it requires constant vigilance. As we look back at the ruins of the Third Reich, we see the ultimate destination of hate: total destruction. What do you think was the true turning point? Was it the economic collapse or the failure of the politicians to stop him in 1933? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this historical breakdown insightful, please hit the like button and subscribe to Preo Tidings for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world.